it was chillier there the first 2 days than it was here. Then it got extremely hot, and then I come back and it's snowing.
Well, this is Michigan, 80 one day and what, 30 the next day?
Yes,
Crazy.
That's crazy.
Anyway, let's get right to it. Your outrage of the week.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so my outrage of the week, and I don't know if I even would characterize it as an outrage. I'm really saddened. These people, it seems to be elderly people, shooting. You guys heard of the young man, I think was 12 years old, and this elderly gentleman shot him. Thank God he's living, he's at home, he's out of the hospital. It really rings home for me because I think I told you guys before about how my brother, he was 14 years old, and he was killed by an elderly man because he was afraid of him. And, as I get older, I'm saying to myself, will I be one of those people that's afraid of young people just because? So I'm really saddened that we're at this point, at this place. You have a young lady that I think she was killed, pulled up in somebody's driveway by mistake.
Right.
Just the fact that people are so, prejudiced, scared.
And I mean, it is happening in a prejudiced way, but also, I mean, the black guy who killed, or didn't kill, but shot at the 6-year-old girl and her dad, and her mother,
because a ball basketball.
And so I'm just outraged, and I do believe this. Guns don't kill people; people use the guns. But I think that people feel emboldened when they have those weapons, that they could just use them with reckless abandon. And legislatures can pass whatever kind of legislation that they want. What about us holding ourselves accountable?
But I think of the times where I tried to open a car door because the car looked just like my car. And I didn't look at the license plates because you can tell the difference. But, and it didn't work. Then I looked inside. I said, "Oh, that's not my stuff.
Right.
That's sitting on the seat."
Right.
So, yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. I was supposed to put it on.
That happened to me at the Honeybee Market there in Southwest.
It's on the yeah.
It happened in the Honeybee Market. I went to a car, a Ford Escape, and I picked up the trunk and it opened up, and suddenly I'm like, man, this trunk looks a lot cleaner than my trunk.
Oh, you were able to open the trunk?
Yeah, it was.
And then somebody come out and shoot you, say it was still
the fact that people, that's their first response. In the case of the elderly man, you have one of his grandsons
say he's a white supremacist.
He says he sits in the house all day long
watching Fox.
Exactly. Believing in these conspiracies. You have another grandson who says, listen, this guy was a supervisor. He worked with all kinds of people. He's not that way. Then you have a wife or ex-wife who says, this guy was abusive. I'm not shocked that he did it. The point of the matter is this, that as long as we don't hold ourselves accountable, as long as we're not responsible, you're going to have this kind of thing. And it's really unfortunate.
Okay, Allan, your outrage.
My outrage of the week is this whole abortion pill thing. It's like, once again, we see Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas, and I predicted it yesterday. I said, it's always the same 7-2 vote.
Right.
There are clearly some votes that should be 9-0. There are obvious votes. The guy down in Texas has come out, even before he was confirmed, he came out on talk shows or whatever saying he was against abortion, against gay marriage, against everything. And here it is, his ruling was so far reaching. It's like, I could see if he said, yes, in states where abortion is outruled or something like that, but there's no state that, as far as I know, that it's totally outruled. It's like, usually like 6 weeks, like down in Florida and stuff like that. But his thing is so far reaching that the decision was so obvious. And yet Clarence Thomas / Ginny Thomas,
he couldn't go home if he voted.
It's so inappropriate. It's so outrageous. And the court, even the most conservative, Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh, they all voted for the most obvious thing because they give a shit about the law.
Right.
And these two people do not care about
But
the
you
law
know
at
what?
all.
As a practitioner, I'm gonna say this, and I think I said this before when we were on the radio. It does make a difference as to, you know, when people run for these seats, although this is the Supreme Court, they're appointed. It does make a difference what their what their political leanings are, because they can look at the law and say, hey, this is how I interpret it, and this is how this should go. And it's really, really, really unfortunate because you know, you're supposed to look at it.
They don't
say,
even know the history of the Supreme Court. We go back. Let's just go back to Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka Board of Education. Now, when Earl Warren was appointed as the Chief Justice, he was the one that interned the Japanese in California when he was the governor. But they thought he was a conservative guy. He turned out to be far to the left.
Right.
But he was able to convince 3 of the most bigoted justices sitting on the court to vote. He said, we need to vote 9-0.
Right.
He said, this is one of the most important things that ever came before the Supreme Court since Plessy versus Ferguson, when they made segregation basically legal.
Right.
So, but they voted. So they went with the majority.
Right.
These two idiots, Clarence Thomas, will listen. If he had his way, he will undo everything.
Absolutely.
And Voting Right Act,
Absolutely.
civil rights, segregation, integration, whatever.
What it is basically these people have no respect for the Constitution. They're legislating from the bench, and if you try to figure out how this country had slavery for so many years when we had a constitution that said people are created equal,
right,
you understand it's people like this. They would have been enforcing slavery at the time because they don't give a shit. They just legislate what their beliefs are, and that's not what a judge is. You know, the legislature, Congress makes the laws. The judges enforce them. And sometimes there's some ambivalence there. Sometimes the laws aren't crafted perfectly. And so that's why we have the Supreme Court to rule of law, to enforce the Constitution. And what we're seeing are two really rogue judges who are constantly, consistently voting their beliefs rather than based on the law.
And speaking of Clarence Thomas, I mean, what's the deal with him with this whole money thing and not making us aware of what his money dealings are, selling property to these big donors. His friends
50 years ago, they forced Abe Fortas to quit because of something less. He got a payment for something, and I mean, they ran him out of the Supreme Court, and this asshole is still on the court.
But I do have a question: that why are we getting this information now? Because this has been going on forever. Why is it now? Why are we just getting this information now? Why now?
Because it's been hidden in the press.
So why was it hidden? Who was hiding it?
He was.
He was.
Okay. And
the media has
well, they start looking at his wife.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his wife put the spotlight on him. You know, you see, he was a good friend with that real asshole Rush Limbaugh. They was best buddies. You don't know how much money him and his wife is taking under the table.
Right.
He done sold the seat. And we have, you know, that goes in. You took my outrage other week, but the outrage is Clarence Thomas is still sitting on the Supreme Court, and nobody
even said a word. I mean, Judge Roberts, the chief judge, should at least say this: we are going to talk about guidelines and ethics in this court. The court is not bound by so many regulations that even the federal judges, the lower level. Why shouldn't the highest level be answering to the highest level of ethics, not above and saying whatever, we're going to do whatever we can. And Judge Roberts is not saying a word.
Vanessa,
how you know what? You get that appointment and you stay there forever. What can they do? I mean, we could talk about it, but if he doesn't, he could be impeached, but that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen.
Not
Yes.
not in
And
these
you know
times.
what? No. And you know what? The Democrats are not going to demand that it happens. The Republicans, of course, are going to protect them. So nothing's going to happen. So what difference
But
does
you,
it
Well,
make?
the-
but you practice law. You done seen the last several years in Wayne County and Detroit, of them kicking and kicking judges off the bench for less than this shit.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
You know, and
Absolutely.
said bye.
Absolutely.
I mean, go at them like they just uncommitted murder, and,
Right.
and force them out.
But
or
the difference
kick them
between
out.
them is this: we don't vote on the Supreme Court justices. We don't.
We
They
don't.
are appointed
Right.
by the
Our-
president of the United States. Whereas even, in the lower courts, you may get an appointment, but people vote for them. Your name shows up on the ballot every few years. So, I mean, there's a difference. Who are you going to report it
That's
to?
like that's
You
like
report it to the
that's
legislatures,
like Roger
and like
B.
you said, they could impeach him, but they're not going to do it.
That's like during the Civil War. Roger B. Taney told Lincoln, "You can't do this, can't do that." Lincoln said, "Just go fuck yourself." And I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. But he was the Clarence Thomas of his day. Saying that black folks was 3/5 human beings and they had no rights, etc. Yeah, so this is what we're dealing with. It need to be an age limit for these lifetime
There should
appointments.
be. But we see
agree.
that. I can tell you,
I agree.
covering the federal court.
What they
for
90,
a long
100
time.
years old?
We've had judges 95. They won't.
There was one that recently just died. He was 105.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you go before him? Do the guy remember anything?
Well, I'll tell you, Abraham Cohn, who I think died at, I can't remember, maybe 97, somewhere around there, who actually was a brilliant judge, and he took senior status. And I have to say, he was still a very good judge. But near the end, I think he had to be kind of pushed and said, okay, it's time. But we see, I've seen a lot of judges, Judge Gilmore, Judge Freeman, these guys, in Detroit, they, it's like, come on, okay, what's
like,
there's got to be a limit to even, let's say,
it look like
80.
they live long.
But this is the
Whatever.
thing. Their egos are so big and so inflated that they don't want to sit down. I think we can all agree that as you get older, there's some diminished capacity. I'm not saying that we can't spread wisdom or anything like that, but you cannot tell me at 85 that you just as quick-witted and you with it as you were at 45, let alone 100.
It was a
105 or
judge in
99.
Iowa, federal judge in Iowa, was 104 years old. I'm like, and he was still hearing cases. I'm like,
well, these guys,
man.
But you have your law clerks and everything, and they do the work.
They
do the work. And,
yeah.
and you know what? It's a great gig. I mean, their identities are so, as a lot of people's jobs are tied to their,
But it was like
identity.
Thurgood Marshall said, he tried to stay on. He said because Bush was the president, the first Bush, and he said just couldn't do it anymore. He wasn't writing the opinions. He wasn't doing anything. He was sick.
Well, look, Ruth Bader Ginsburg stayed a little too long. They were trying to convince
she
her.
had an ego too.
She was a great judge, but it was time to go. I mean,
Dianne Feinstein.
Yeah, I mean, there's people. It's time to go and hand it
off.
Go.
They won't go.
And particularly in a if you're a Democrat and you want to keep a balance on the court, I mean,
but you have people. Say for example, the late Mayor Coleman Young. He was sickly.
Right.
He had emphysema. He had all kind of ailments. But you had people that depended on him being in office, and they was putting the pressure. That last term, he should have left. And Joe, I asked him, I said, why are you not on a beach somewhere?
Right.
He said, I was responsible for a lot of folks, contracts, jobs. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, Coleman stayed too long. And I thought the first 8 years were great. I think, and you have a better insight to this, but I thought in the very beginning he brought some.
He made the changes.
He brought some very smart friends in, who were able to tell him, "No, Coleman, you're wrong." They left, and then he brought in some younger people who were really sycophants and really just like whatever he wanted. They were afraid to stand up to him. His friends were not.
Well, but you know what? And you're right in a sense. What he liked and what he respected is when you really told him go go get fucked, Coleman.
Right,
You didn't say that, but
right.
you made it known that
Right.
no, you shouldn't be doing that. And he didn't like ass kisses.
Right.
I asked him one time, the deputy mayor Fred Martin. I said, why you have him working in your top aide? He said, because Fred do anything that I asked Fred to do. If he jump out the window, Fred would jump out the window. I say,
I say this, good leadership. If you want good leadership, you need to be able to have people who are going to
ain't gonna jump out the window.
Jump out the window.
Ain't no question. Well, we're gonna take a break and we'll come back with our first guest.
All right.
It's Detroit in black and white.
The land bank.
Homeownership opportunities are rising in the city of Detroit, and there's a house out there that's right for you and your family. You don't even have to worry about credit or getting a loan. You can win a house for as little as $1,000 and pay for the renovation cost as you go. It all starts at buildingdetroit.org and the Detroit Land Bank Authority. Our auction and Own It Now programs offer a variety of houses in neighborhoods all over the city of Detroit. These homes are in desperate need of repair and new ownership. You can begin by going to our interactive map and detailed property listings to find the right fit for you. It won't be easy, and renovation costs are not cheap, but our compliance team is there every step of the way. We will help you track your progress and connect you with local discounts to save you more money. We have already sold more than 15,000 homes in the city of Detroit, and our inventory is shrinking fast, so you don't want to miss out on this wonderful opportunity. Start your home buying journey today by visiting buildingdetroit.org.
Street, man. You was affected by it. You might not
All
been
right.
alive.
Here we go. We're back.
Welcome back.
We are back.
Listen, you know what brings us to you every Saturday morning is the magic of this guy right here, Joe Robinson.
Yes,
not only is he the producer, the engineer, but he owns this beautiful studio.
Apex Studio
Yeah.
in downtown Ferndale.
Right.
9 Mile Road. Here we are.
Absolutely.
And he remind me of Forrest Gump. He's a running fool.
I love that movie, actually.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite movies.
And Joe has also got it's We Run 313. It's
Yeah.
a running group. And how can people join that?
People can join it just by showing up.
And where do you show up to?
You got to show up. We got a new location starting May 2nd at Breadless, which is 2471 East Larned, right across from the Martin Lawrence building.
Okay. And you have a website as well. And you have a Facebook page.
WeRun313.com. Yep. We run. So it's on the screen. We Run 313. Just WeRun313.com. We Run 313 on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever.
Well, you know, you got an interesting story growing up, and I think anybody that grew up in Detroit and the suburbs knows about the drug trade, especially in the last 40, 50 years, where you had Young Boys Incorporated, Best Friends, Chamber Brothers.
Yeah.
You had a whole list of folks doing a whole list of things. Tell us.
And before we get going, I apologize to our viewers. I originally put that Joe's father had an affiliation with YBI, which is a group that started in the late 70s and into the 80s, selling heroin. They became known for using underage kids to run their dope so that they couldn't get in as much legal trouble. Joe's father had some affiliation. He's going to fill us in. And really, before Joe was born,
Right.
Had an affiliation with Best Friends, which
you should talk about you covered.
I covered for the Detroit News,
yeah.
and I worked on it for probably 4 or 5 months. It originally started with the Brown brothers. There were 4 of them. They were originally a hit gang where other dope gangs would hire them to murder people. They continued on with that, but then they got into the dope business as well. 2 of the brothers were murdered. And then in the end, there was an indictment under seal. One of the brothers ended up found dead in Atlanta. He was wrapped in a Yves Saint Laurent bed sheet, found in the back of an SUV down there. And I remember being out there for the funeral out there on the east side. And then the last one left was Reggie Brown, who I believe was found in New York. They were chasing him and they caught him. And I was at his arraignment and he was calling the ATF agents bitches and they were just smiling. And Reggie is, I believe, in state prison serving.
He want to kick you. He want to kick your ass. But
Yeah,
anyway, we go to Joe. Joe has a different outlook on how, even though he wasn't born, how it affected his life growing up and how he became the person that he is today. Go ahead, Joe. Tell us about yourself.
Although that story right there was happened well before me.
Right.
I had no firsthand experience in any of those drug organizations from Detroit.
Sure.
However, my father and my uncle, both of them, had some firsthand experience with those organizations.
Right.
To what degree? I mean, it's kind of obvious, but
so tell us. So you were born in 91.
91.
The best friends, I think, operated till about 93, 94. So you were a baby.
Yeah,
you were a baby at the time.
But I think that my relatives were done by like 91.
Okay.
All the pictures and stories that I hear were.
You had cousins.
Where was your dad? Where was your dad at that time? And like when you were born,
right? My dad actually was just getting out of prison. So my dad went to prison very early.
For what?
How old? Yeah, how old was he?
My dad went to prison at 16.
Wow.
Okay.
For double homicide.
Wow.
Yeah, and he didn't do. They didn't charge him as an adult, obviously.
Right.
So he did like 8 years.
Okay.
He did like 8 years. He went to Jackson, but they did send him to an adult prison.
Mhm.
But they didn't charge him as an adult, because if you're an adult with a double homicide,
right?
Why would they do that?
They changed it.
Vanessa.
This was in 1990. This before I even started law school.
Yeah, always wanted to know why. Why did they do that?
So I mean, they've changed it since then. I mean that's what they were doing then. That's the only way I can explain it. Because they don't do those kind of things now. And it was really,
you take a kid and put him among wolves.
Exactly.
But his charges didn't reflect his sentencing didn't reflect an adult, but they put
a kid in a prison with adults.
But he was convicted as a juvenile
at 16.
Yeah, and then you say right that we put him there so they can be rehabilitated, but you put him in there with adults. And you say that our brain does not develop until we're 25 or 26 years old. Right. What do you expect to happen?
When he got
out, what did you expect for him to
happen? How old was he
when you expect?
I think my dad, when he got out 8 years later. So what's the math? 24, 25. And then he had me. He did have his time in the street. So all those organizations, my dad and my uncle.
Are you sure that, because my understanding is, and Vanessa, you might know better, and maybe the laws have changed, but if you were convicted as a juvenile when you're 16, I think you can only stay in the system till 19. Is that, am I correct? Or?
No,
he did his
so
time.
Until 21. I don't know what it was then, but they can keep them in until they're 21 years old.
21.
So there's
but I think that maybe he had other things going on in prison, because my dad
got tickets and things like that.
Because he was the lead. He was like a leader of a gang and all type of stuff.
So he was a leader of a gang in prison.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And did that? Let me ask you this: did that lead into when he got out? That he continued with the gang activity, best friends, etc.
Yeah, so my dad's from 7 Mile and Van Dyke, and he was, from my understanding, maybe some of his people that know him, because he's pretty popular over there. If any of them watching, but
what's his name?
They call him Crazy Joe.
Okay,
right. All the police know him. Everybody knows him. So he was from what my understanding, he was like one of the higher up guys in that group. So, so when he got out, met my mother, had me during this time, he was still like in the streets and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Doing that whole thing. But it was his brother, my Uncle George, who passed away, who was really hand to hand with those organizations.
With Best Friends and any other organizations besides?
I think it was just that one. Like
just Best Friends.
He talked about that. He used to talk about that a lot.
They
both passed away.
And do you have any idea what their operations was? It all wholesale, or did they have crack houses and dope houses?
Both. From what they told me, it would be both of those. You know what I mean? I don't really want to go into detail about it because really, who raised my mother? My mother and my grandmother and my uncle too. So the uncle I'm referring to, that's my dad's brother. But my mother, my grandmother, and my uncle, my mother's brother, raised me as well. Yeah.
So you're in elementary school, right? And the kids say, "Oh my God, don't mess with Joe.
They said that
crazy Joe."
They actually did say that. So like they didn't say that at my school, but my neighborhood was saying that. You know what I'm saying? So I was.
How did you feel about that? Did you feel emboldened? Did you feel like, hey, I've got protection?
I felt protected because I'm the only child. So unlike people with brothers or sisters,
don't fuck with him.
When a fight break out in the neighborhood, if you got brothers and sisters, you like, okay, I know my brother's gonna show up.
Yeah.
With me, my dad wasn't around, but I knew that if something happened to me, he's not far. I knew that I could probably locate him if something really was going on with me. And people did say that though.
They knew that.
They did know that. Yeah, people in the neighborhood did know that.
And you felt. Did you feel good? Did you feel proud about your dad, or did you feel? How did you feel about that?
I didn't really care like that because my mom and him needed help for real. He wasn't there, but it was like, oh, okay.
Now, when you say that he wasn't there, you mean that he wasn't physically present, but did he?
He wasn't present. So by time he said elementary school. By the time I got there, all that cowboy stuff was over.
Okay,
that was done.
Okay,
yeah,
and that would have been what you started elementary school in what 90?
Probably 94, 90.
So were you ever tempted to
get in the streets?
Yeah.
I mean, growing up over there, yeah, I was because all my friends was doing it. But I didn't. I just don't know. I don't know why. Literally, if you guys were my friends group, all y'all was doing it, and all y'all was telling me to do it. And for some reason, I just didn't do it.
And what kind of lifestyle were your friends living at that time? If they were all doing that, did they have nice cars?
No. Well, no. So we were kids, and by the time that came to me, I was probably 13 or 14. So this is like the year 2000. You know what I mean? 2000. So the drug business wasn't what it was. So these guys wasn't making nothing. They were making pennies.
Right.
I mean, you a lawyer, so you see these kind of people all the time.
Right? They don't have the long bread like they used to. But let me ask you this. So by the time you were in high school,
right,
was your dad and your uncle still living?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Even though they were making pennies, how were they surviving? And did you have? Did you?
Oh, I don't mean
came into your own. Did you?
I don't mean my dad and uncle was making pennies from drugs. I mean like
you're talking about the other folks.
the other young guys.
It wasn't like young boys.
Right.
I got
when
the young boys first came on the scene, they were walking around $5,000-$6,000 in their pocket. They go to Northland and they buying up 25 bottles of cologne and pulling the money out of a handbag. And
somebody know Crazy Joe was a lieutenant, right?
Okay. I retired. Was in the police department.
Right. Every cop pretty much know my dad.
They knew your dad. And so by high school, okay, you're out. Your dad still.
My dad was in prison. So my dad, he recently passed away in October. Right?
Oh.
And he was 50.
Well, 58.
58.
His obituary's in the car. I should know this, but I keep it in my car. But I would say over his nearly 60 years of living, he probably did 30 to 35 of that in prison. Yeah.
And when he was out, what kind of lifestyle was he living? And did he give you any money?
No, my dad didn't have no money. He, like I said, y'all saw Snowfall, right?
Yeah.
I haven't watched the last 2 seasons, but yeah.
I don't want to spoil it for you.
Everybody keep telling me
It's
that.
all over Facebook. And
I haven't looked at it.
okay,
I
well,
haven't
I'm
looked
just
at it,
saying
but
I'm not
You
spoiling
were
it.
saying your
I'm gonna
dad was
binge.
like Franklin in Snowfall.
Well, he wasn't like multi-millionaire status,
Right.
but he was someone in the streets, but then evolved into a much lesser version.
And did he show you any love during the times when
My
he was
dad
out?
loved me infinitely.
Yeah.
But the streets came first, you know, and I'm just being
So
honest.
you was
Yeah,
low
he spent most of his time in
the
prison.
prison.
Yeah.
So,
I want to
Did you
talk about
visit
that.
him? Did you
I
visit
did.
You
him?
want to talk about the prison?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. So like I did, not prison. I never been to Jackson. He stayed in Jackson, and he did time in the what's the other one? It's two.
Marquette, Huron
He
Valley.
didn't do
Huron Valley.
What about
Huron
in
Valley
Saginaw?
was
They got
a men's facility. They're all over.
Well, he went to two. He went to Ionia for sure, and Jackson for sure, because I got letters. And
So he wrote you.
oh, he wrote me all the time. I never
Okay.
wrote back. I actually didn't write him back until I was writing his eulogy.
And how come
Okay.
you didn't write back?
I was just a young teenager, little boy. Like I didn't know how to write I did write back once, but I didn't know how to write. And then
What was he right? Was he giving you advice about life?
just telling me how much he loved me and stuff.
Did you save the letters?
They somewhere. I saved the drawing. Well, my mother saved the drawings. So
Okay,
there.
so he was.
Yeah, he draw really well. I learned
okay.
how to draw from
He
him. But
sketched very well.
yeah,
Okay.
like he could take a photo and draw the photo. But
So when you were in high school, he was already in prison.
yeah,
Part of
yes and no. So he was a habitual offender.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So he
In
would
and
be
out.
in and out.
Mhm.
One time he said that he actually lived up to his name and told the judge he was crazy. So one time he was in an asylum and he was like, man, they trying to give me these pills. Every time they look away, I throw them,
Right.
or I put it under my tongue.
Right.
You know, because you go to asylum, they're gonna make you crazy with the pills.
Right.
So the thing about the jail, I never visited Jackson, but I did visit Wayne County a few times,
Oh,
and I hated that.
What did you feel like walking in?
I felt like a prisoner.
Yeah, because the door is clean.
Do
Yeah,
you-
and they-
do
and they
feel
telling
like-
you what to do. They like, yeah, walk on the yellow line.
Do you feel like that, Vanessa?
Man, I
Yeah, because you
do.
probably got
I
to see
hate it.
clients,
I
right?
hate it, but you know, it's the nature of the beast. So you have to go and visit your.
It's scary.
Visit your clients.
I
remember
felt like a prisoner.
Well, I've been to
Yeah.
Jackson
bro.
before because I tutored. I took a class when I was in school, and I had to go to Jackson once a week. And there was people that coming up to me saying, "I know your brother, I know your uncles," and the guards be saying, "You like you know a lot of people here." I said, "Nah, they know me from where I came from."
Yeah.
And then people want to see you know what's happening. What's happening on 8 Mile Road? What's know?
What's happening at the
So-
Glen Lodge?
So
Show bar.
Joe, when you went in, it was you said you felt terrible. Did you feel scared? Because I could tell you the first time I went, when those doors clanged, I was like, oh my
You
God,
feel like a
what the heck?
prisoner, right?
Man. Yes.
And then they telling you like, yeah, walk on the yellow line. I'm like, why you telling me what to do?
take your you have to give up all your
Everything.
belongings.
I'll tell you this:
but, after a while you get used to it. I'm used to it.
I
now.
never felt scared doing anything in close proximity to my dad
Okay.
because so many people was, I don't want to say scared of him, but he had a lot of respect.
So
I
did you have
understand.
that? Did you have a protection like in high school? Did that go on through your life? Like, hey, Crazy Joe's kid, don't.
No, nobody in my, because I went right here at Ferndale.
Uh-huh.
So nobody knew. Maybe if I went to his high school, he went to Osborne. Maybe if I would have went to Persian,
Right.
those were our schools over there. But
Right.
but I went to Ferndale. You know?
Okay.
But you know, whenever I was over there,
Mhm.
and if anybody listening, I'm talking about Nevada, Concord, Hilldale, Robinwood,
Mhm.
Stockton, that neighborhood. That's Crazy Joe's son.
Okay.
That's Crazy Joe's son. That's Crazy Joe. You Crazy Joe's son? Oh man, that's Crazy Joe's son. Everywhere I went, everywhere. So although by the time my dad was in his 30s, 40s going into his 50s, he had completely kind of didn't have like no money or anything, but the respect, I will say this about my dad, the respect remained
till the end. How long was he out? Like before
What
he
the
died?
longest,
When he
the longest
died?
time?
Yeah, it was
longest-
it's about
when
the
he
window.
died. When
Yeah.
he died, how long had he been out?
He
for?
had probably been out for probably 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Did you get an opportunity to communicate? Or
Yeah,
see
he
him?
started losing his mind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So he did have some, you think, mental health issues?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think
Drugs and alcohol.
from the get go?
That's what I wanted to talk about. So yeah, so
that's what I was going to ask you about. What did he have a problem with substance abuse?
yes.
Okay, so
So,
he had a history of substance
From
abuse.
day one, though, like I said, he went to prison when he was 16.
Right.
I never got the opportunity to talk about my dad either. So this is kind of interesting. I'm glad y'all allowed me to do this. So he did go to prison when he was 16, right? I don't want to miss the comments on here. His dad reputation was, yeah, that's good. Yeah,
all right.
People definitely know my dad. He was a real cowboy. But so from 16, him going to prison like that and being abandoned by his father, my granddad, who I love dearly, who I'm named after, who we all named after.
Mm-hmm.
My granddad kind of abandoned him. Mm-hmm. And that broke his heart because he's my granddad's oldest son. My granddad had 5 kids. He was the oldest.
Uh-huh.
And when he went to prison, my granddad just was like, if you go to jail, don't call me. And he stood on that. So he had to be in there for nearly 10 years as a child. My dad told me when he first got to prison the first day, he said he got beat senseless by people who knew who knew the victims of the crime.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said they beat him to death almost. You know what I mean? And I think that drove him crazy. That drove him mad. You know what I'm saying? Then when he got out of jail, there is no reform.
That's cruel and unusual punishment.
It really is. I mean, when you think about the trauma of.
And real quick, I think
16-year-old
if my granddad, you said a good term, and I want to hear your opinion on this, cruel and unusual punishment. And I think if my granddad would have stepped in, they would have had a claim for something like that.
And who did he kill? The double homicide? How did that?
Know.
You don't know.
I have no idea what happened with that. They don't even say. I have his his sheet,
his rap sheet, or whatever.
Yeah, and I have the charges and everything. But
when you were in junior high, you were elementary school,
I
high
didn't
school.
cut you off. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry about that.
No. Go ahead, tell your story.
In high school, were you proud? Did you have shame that your dad was in prison? Had been a big dope dealer, or
I had wanted nothing more. I had wanted nothing more than my dad. You know what I'm saying? He was in jail and stuff, so
right.
I wasn't like proud.
But you weren't embarrassed either.
I wasn't embarrassed.
That's your dad.
Yeah, I wasn't embarrassed, but I wasn't
get
like,
that.
yeah.
I get it better than what you think.
I was proud. Like whenever he would get out of jail, he didn't wear his history on his face.
Right.
He's always smiling and happy.
So like if you didn't know him, you wouldn't
even know.
You wouldn't look at him as a criminal
when he got out.
Always ecstatic. And then but you see, but I think that was a big part of his why he was so successful in the street, because his ability to smile and crack jokes. He was a comedian.
He was a charmer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I guess the point I was trying to make was going to jail at 16 drive you crazy. Then you getting cruel treatment in there. That's gonna drive you crazy. And then if you mix that with drugs and alcohol, it's just a.
When do you know when your father started using substances?
Yeah, so it was like the year I was born, from what I'm told. Like when I was born, he kind of just. I hope my mom is not watching because I don't want to mess this story up.
Okay.
But from what I remember, I've been told the story a million times. I've even been told a story about him. You know, it's like the year I was born, he kind of just ran off and went with this woman another woman on the west side of Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
and she was using, and she she offered drugs to him.
When we talk using, are we talking
crack
heroin,
cocaine?
Crack.
So he started using crack. Okay.
Yeah, and then she was using, and then that turned him on to it, and then.
Did he continue to use up until his death? Do you know?
I believe so. I honestly believe that his death was caused by fentanyl, because I know the dealers in that neighborhood still, and they love and respect my dad. And one of the young men in that neighborhood, one of the dealers told me that he was like, "Hey, this guy had an argument with your dad," and he was like, "Man, you know, I'm gonna hit him with some fent."
Oh, really? Is that?
That's messed up.
That's a rumor that I heard.
So do you hear that out? Is that common that people will say, "I'm going to fuck this person up"?
I don't know. I'm not in the street. Right. I don't know. I only heard that because I had to go over there when he died. So people was coming up to me, telling me, showing their respect and showing me these different things. But then somebody told me that. So
well, you know, they would know because they out there. That's one thing that you find out the truth in the streets because they don't lie. You know, you can lie to folks, but you can go and find out what the real deal, and they know shit. Yeah. I know who killed that person.
Oh, they be knowing for sure.
You know, that's why I guess the police get frustrated because when they go to these homicides and stuff, they know people. No, they talk to the people that know. But
they even pointed the guy out to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was at the
funeral.
He was at the repast.
Oh, really?
So
yeah, he walked in the repast, and they was like, "Yeah, see, that's."
And did all this, your dad's lifestyle? Did that you living a pretty straight and narrow? You've got the 313 thing going. You run, you jog. You're in great shape. You don't even drink.
Don't smoke.
You don't smoke. You're engaged. You've got a very straight and narrow.
You seem to be so serious.
I'm a comedian.
When I first met you, I said this guy to be a young guy.
I'm actually a comedian.
He is, because I talked to him, and that first time we talked, I was like, I'm talking to you like you're my son,
right?
The same age as my oldest son. But Joe has a very interesting story, not just his history from his father, but just as his mother raising him as a single mom and how she supported you as an entrepreneur. I think that our viewers need to hear that part of your story as well.
Yeah, I'll tell that. Well, you had a question. What was your question?
I was just saying in terms of did your father's history and seeing him going in and out of prison, did that sort of scare you to be just,
or did it support what I'm doing?
Yeah, did it help you like stay away from that lifestyle, realizing
that's a great segue
how messed up it is.
Yes, it did. So amid my father and at his funeral and repast, man, the stories was endless, like stories of glory. Everybody talking this stuff, right? Telling all these amazing stories and things. And I'm listening to everything. They're like, oh man, this guy, like he's a hero.
Right.
And I'm like, but behind that was my mom having to pay bills by herself.
Right.
You know, she didn't go to college. She didn't have like no skilled trade or anything like that.
And what did your mom do?
My mom actually, she had good jobs. Actually, she automotive industry like everyone else for I think the longest period, and then she worked some other jobs when I was real small. But from what I remember, she worked as a kind of like a nurse type thing, but it was 12 to 12.
Wow.
12 noon to 12 midnight. You know what I mean? Or 12 midnight to 12 noon.
Right.
And then she worked in the automotive industry. From what I remember.
Why don't you hold tight? We're going to play another spot, then we're going to come back and continue.
Nearly 30,000 vacant lots all over the city of Detroit are for sale right now. That's right. Nearly 30,000 vacant lots are available now, starting at just $100. The lot next to your house or the lot down the street. Make it yours today in just a few simple clicks. Find out if it is available by visiting buildingdetroit.org. At the Detroit Land Bank Authority, side lots are just $100 and neighborhood lots sell for $250. You can apply and pay online today by visiting buildingdetroit.org. And if you don't see the lot you're looking for, call our offices. Our phone number is 313-974-6869. Again, that is 313-974-6869. We have already sold more than 21,000 vacant lots to Detroit homeowners. Make today your turn by visiting buildingdetroit.org.
Yes, not going for the
All right,
neighborhood.
we are
We're
back.
back.
Right.
Oh,
We are back.
that's
Well,
Sack's daughter. You
well,
know.
well,
They treat you like
with
royalty.
Joe
Right.
Robinson.
Yeah.
And we got some interesting stories during the break. But Joe, your mom and your grandmother played a hand in molding you as a person.
So, like I was saying, was all those cowboy hero stories people were telling about my dad, there was my mother behind all that stuff, struggling and dealing with pain and frustration. Because they were married. So,
Oh.
So they were still
Yeah.
married that whole time?
yeah, like I didn't
They
have
never got a divorce.
never got a divorce.
And
Separated.
Did they have a relationship though?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They didn't have like an intimate relationship, but so I like to tell this story, this part of it. My dad and my mother, they did things right. They got married before they had me.
Mhm.
You know, unlike most Black people, you know what I mean? So they got married before they had me. They had me in wedlock, you know, and it was great. And I think that falling apart took a toll on my mother. And so when people telling all them stories, you know, how they got all the, like in the comments, they saying who my dad was and all that.
Mhm.
Behind that was us struggling and going through stuff. You know what I mean? And so
you didn't want to hear all that.
I mean, I respect it. You know,
Right.
I don't get offended. I believe, you know, getting
But
offended is a
The
choice.
thing is, they have their story, but you live the story.
I lived it.
With
You know
your
what I mean?
mom,
Right.
with your grandmother, and with your uncle.
Right.
And so, even your mom was devoted to you. She was still married to your dad.
Right. Right. I don't know why they didn't get a divorce though. They was just
They weren't
they just
together.
was- they was just being, kind of
in other
being
ways.
lazy about
But
it.
your mom, so your mom was your guiding light.
Yeah, and my
and your grandmother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And my uncle too though. My uncle,
The one who, what was his name?
this is my uncle Poochie. So
Okay.
my uncle George is the one who was
He was the dope.
he was
a big
kind of like
doper.
a kingpin
Yeah.
type guy.
Right.
My uncle Poochie was in the streets too, not as big as my uncle George, but he definitely was heavy in the streets as well. But
Right.
my uncle was like my father figure because my family is like super close. We live next door to each other. These my blood relatives.
Mhm.
I mean, like their house, my house. Like we never separated. Once my
Right.
uncle got a divorce, then the family kind of started separating. His wife moved to the west side, took the
Right.
kids to the west. Then we got spread out, but we always lived on the same street next door to each other.
Right.
Always. So to answer your question, yes, my father and his history and what he done, it pretty much frustrated me into doing the right thing.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because I would have to deal with my mom being frustrated about that stuff. And that took a toll on
And
me.
what did she say? What did she tell you about your father? What did she say about?
Well, she
that
was
lifestyle?
very upset about it a lot. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, sometimes we'll take it out on me. You know, because I guess I got his name. We look alike.
Right,
you know?
right.
And
You reminded her of.
right, and there ain't no. My mom didn't grow up with the father, so there's a lot missing there.
A lot of issues too.
Yeah, a lot.
Fridge stuff.
Yes, a lot missing. A lot of tutelage missing. A lot of leadership missing.
Right.
So you don't, people not telling you how to deal with your problems the right way. So it kind of hurt. You know what I mean? And then go ahead.
So, Joe, your mom didn't get a degree. She worked for the automotive industry.
Right.
Your dad was, we already know his history.
Mhm.
You graduate from high school and then you go to college. Is that correct?
I did. Yes.
And that's when your entrepreneurial spirit was sparked.
So what
Can you
Right.
tell us about?
And
Tell
where'd you go to
people about
school?
that?
Tell us a little bit about.
All right. So actually, my entrepreneurial spirit was sparked before that.
Okay.
I had my cousin had gave me a hat and for free. And then there was this guy on the street, and he was like, "Man, that's a nice hat." And I was like 11, and I was like, "You could buy it." Yeah, and
He bought it.
I made $20.
Oh, wow.
I felt rich.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I was like 11, 12. I felt
What
rich.
was the hat?
It was a white and navy blue. What's the team with the lowercase a?
Athletics?
know.
Angels. It was a lower, but they colors red
and blue.
Yeah, but this one was like a special one.
Okay,
So they changed the color scheme. And this guy on the street bought it, and I felt
they
rich.
were the California Angels, not a
Right.
LA Angels.
LA.
Yeah. So
So-
you sold it.
Sold
You
it,
done
and,
like
and I
my-
was like, "Oh, it's on," you know what I'm saying? And then I had got in high school. I had somebody gave me a beat machine, like kind of like the one. It's covered up, but I got one back there. And long story short, I sold that too, and I was like, "Oh, this is working." And then in high school, I started to collect shoes, and then when I got to college,
Right.
I had a huge shoe collection. By the time I got enough
What
shoes,
kind of shoes were you getting? Like Jordans?
Jordans, special Nikes, special
Uh-huh.
edition stuff like that. You know, I just was.
And what kind of profit would you make off something like
Oh man,
that? A lot.
a lot. Yeah. When
Like
I sold
hundreds or thousands?
thousands.
Thousands.
So you in the shoe business, and then at a tender young age, you get you a rap group.
Yeah,
Became a manager.
yeah. I became a manager exactly. So
Name of the group.
this was Big Sean, Finally Famous.
Mhm.
So I don't know if people know Big Sean had a group. Well, he didn't have a group. He was a part of a group called
Uh-huh.
Finally Famous, and that group it was like maybe 10 of them, but that group had about 4 rappers in it, and Big Sean was one
And
of
how
them.
did you connect with them?
So I was selling shoes, and I was downtown one day, and when I was 18, I worked at this clothing store named Spectacles
Oh
downtown.
yeah, Zayna.
Yeah.
Zayna, right?
Zayna.
She been there 30 some years.
Yeah.
She's still there.
Uh-huh.
She is a legend.
She was there before they had anything.
Anything,
Yeah.
And
anything.
it was bold the way they
Did
did
her.
her.
Of
Yeah,
course.
but she's, our business is still.
She's
surviving.
still there,
Right.
Yeah.
you know. And I go see her from time to time.
She had some nice stuff.
Yeah, facts. So shout out to Zayna because she hired me without nothing. I just went in there and said, "Hey, can I work here?" And she was like, "Yeah, show up on this day." No app, no interview, no nothing. She had knew me because I shopped there.
Right.
So anyway, she was like, "You know what? You need to do an event." I was like, "What we gonna do?" And she was like, "Well, you sell shoes. Why don't you sell your shoes in here?" So I brought all my shoes, invited everybody I knew who collected shoes because there was a community of us.
Mhm.
Right.
This is before StockX.
Right.
Actually, when StockX came out, I was like, "Bro, I was already doing that."
Right.
I
Did
don't
you
even-
feel like? Did
I'm
you
sorry. I
Feel a
don't
missed
even know what
opportunity
that
there
is.
that you should have been as well?
Yes.
Right.
What is StockX?
StockX
I don't
is
know
It's
what
Dan
that
Gilbert's. It's Dan Gilbert's.
Yeah, so StockX is like, but shout out to the guys who did it because
Right.
I know one of them. Shout out to them; they did an amazing job. One of the founders is black too, so shout out to him. But StockX is an online site app that you can buy and sell trade shoes,
Okay.
and it's huge. It's huge,
Okay.
worth hundreds of millions. So anyway, she was like, "Yeah, you need to do an event. Bring your shoes." So I invited my community. We brought shoes. It was a big deal. And one of the artists in Finally Famous, his name's Early Mac, was next door getting food. And we'll go next door and get food. And Zayna was like, "We gotta do another event." And I was like, "Okay." She was like, music. I was like, "Bet." I didn't know Earl Early Mac, but I heard him on Big Sean's early mixtapes. So when I seen him, I was kind of hyped. I'm like, "Oh, snap. You such and such." She just said, "We need to do an event. Why don't you come by? Let's talk. Let's do the event." Long story short, we did the event. And it was great. Basically, he came and was like rapping in the store. Right. And I was 18 years old. So one day he was like, "Yo, you sell shoes?" I'm like, "Yeah." So he gave me some shoes to sell. Some MF Doom SB Dunks. I remember what they are. Y'all look that up. MF Doom SB Dunks. They're really expensive now. They were expensive back then. And I sold them in like 2 days. And he gave me half the money for it, which was like people don't even do.
Right.
Maybe he was like, a rookie to how it worked. But I wasn't about to educate him.
Right.
Usually you get what kind of percentage?
Man, you get you might so we sell some shoes for $200. You might sell them for $250.
Right.
Okay, you get the 50.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sold them for $280. He gave me half.
Oh wow. Nice.
So I wasn't about to educate him on how this worked either. I was like, bet, you know what I'm saying? So we did that. And then so once I sold the shoes, he was like, yo, you seem like kind of person know how to make money. Why don't you come to the studio?
Right.
I had never been to the studio before. But when I got there, it's a 1250 Griswold. Right there where the bus station used to be, Rosa Parks bus station.
Right,
Literally
sure.
right there. So it's a 3-level studio in there that used to be a bank. It's not anymore. So I get there and everybody's there. Everybody who's somebody in the Detroit rap scene is there. Are y'all familiar with X-Men and like Charles Xavier? He got the house for gifted youngsters.
Okay.
All those mutants in one house. It was like that.
Okay.
Like all these gifted people was in one place.
Charles Xavier, he live here in Detroit.
No, that's the X-Men leader.
Who is that?
X-Men,
Oh, okay.
the comic books.
You know, listen, I don't know that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
That's why I'm laughing.
Well, and I'm sorry, I'm ignorant when it comes to that. But
Eric was saying, that wasn't the it was
No,
the
that ain't-
Montreal.
that ain't-
Okay,
no,
that was not it,
but-
Eric.
but-
Eric
but
was
anyway,
showing the,
so-
Montreal Expo. Yeah.
we going up against the timing wall.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all
No,
right.
no, it's been great.
That's all right.
Great. We'll
You-
do it again, man.
Fast
More-
forward,
it's
you became
Detroit
manager of
history.
Yeah,
Slum
and
Village,
actually,
right?
Early Mac, y'all can't see it, but that's a 3 times platinum plaque that he
Okay.
earned for writing the song right there. That song is
Okay.
actually 8 times platinum.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
So that
good.
artist, he did get some success. And then fast forward, I did become a tour manager for Slum Village, and I did throw events across the nation. I did do all these things, and I have my own studio. Blah blah blah.
Well, you know, you got a great story, Joe.
And then I got
There's
into
no
running.
question. Yes, quickly.
Yeah. So
Tell us about
running
the club.
actually is like my main thing. Running is what.
And is that a business or a nonprofit, or how does that work?
Well, it just started out as something I love, and it evolved into a business by demand. The people who we started to bring out, me and my partner Lance Woods, those people asked us.
You got a line of
And you got gear. And
Yeah.
you got gear and
Yeah.
all
We
that
got
stuff.
merchandise. We have memberships. We do big events.
How do they get if somebody wants some of your gear or want to join your club? How they get in touch with you?
We run 313 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Visit our website, werun313.com. You can Google us, YouTube us. We've done tens of, probably over 50 interviews and stuff. So
Okay.
Yeah,
You
for
see
those
there it
people-
says we run 313. There.
And for those people who ask me, where did I get the sweatshirt that I've been rocking to go work out and take it off? This is the young man that I bought the
Thank you.
sweatshirt from.
Thank you.
What if a walker want to join your running club?
We gonna encourage you to run, but you can come out and walk. It ain't illegal, but we gonna encourage you to run for sure.
Okay,
All right. Well,
man.
Joe,
Yeah.
thanks so much, man.
We don't have to have you on again, Joe, because you listen. We can talk forever.
Yeah.
Everybody got their own personal stories, own personal history
Right.
to a notorious time,
Yeah.
and we still got the drug issues, but with the Young Boys and the Chamber Brothers, etc.
Right.
Allan covered them as a newspaper reporter. Vanessa represented folks in that world as a defense attorney. Joe grew up knowing about
As a
his
product.
connections,
Mhm.
and I, yes, is connected. Whether I know friends or family that have been affected, that have lost their life because of this continuing war in the street.
Right. So, what I want to say to Joe, people like Joe, myself, that are watching this show, never be embarrassed about where you came from, because in fact, that's made you who you are.
Right.
I knew as
Absolutely.
a kid, my dad had a reputation, a notorious reputation. And I am thankful every day because his history made me who I am today.
Mhm.
his history, his parents' history made him who he is today,
Absolutely.
and so on and so forth. So, for those people who have parents that may be incarcerated or someone is in the grips of addiction,
Mhm.
addiction is a disease. It is an addiction. It's nothing for you as a kid to be embarrassed about because you don't have anything to do with that.
There ain't no question, Allan. When you were growing up, your father and mother,
Yeah.
Holocaust survivors.
Right.
You saw the number tattooed.
Well, it's interesting. My mother, her brother had a number. She did not have a number.
They had to get tattooed.
Brandon?
They had to get tattooed, but near the end, they were she was in Auschwitz. They were less organized, and they weren't tattooing everybody. But I knew growing up, my parents had suffered a great injustice, and really half the block out of 20 families, probably 12, were Holocaust survivors. My neighbor did have numbers on their arms and stuff. So I grew up.
Did they try to hide it?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, it's funny.
Was it like a badge of honor?
Yeah, well, it's funny. My uncle Eugene, who's still alive, and I just talked to yesterday. He's in Florida. He's 97. He has a tattoo from Auschwitz, and I said to him this quite a while ago. I said, "Do you ever think about removing that?" He goes, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "I'm proud of that."
Right.
But I grew up, and I think that's why partly journalism attracted me so much. Is I saw a way to expose injustices about abuses of power, and and it's interesting. I won't get into the whole thing, but in kindergarten, my teacher would pick on me, and I was really incredibly shy, and and she thought my parents back then, they used the term retarded. My mother thought I was retarded because I was so quiet, and the teacher didn't understand me. So when I went to the first grade, the very first day, they put me in the third reading group, which was all the dumbest kids. And I remember looking around. By the end of the first day, I was in the first group. And so at that point, I really, that impacted me, that a teacher was really abusing her power and doing all this bullshit stuff to me.
And my wife, who was a former educator, she said, hate that how they was labeling kids and stuff. Because when I was in the first grade, they had the bluebirds they could read, the redbirds not so much. Then when the teachers say yellow birds up to the classroom, here's the bullies and the people that cause all the trouble because they had a learning issue. So But anyway, Joe, thanks a lot for coming on the show and reliving your experience growing up.
I never got a chance to tell that story ever.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad that you decided to do it.
That's like therapy. Being able to share that.
That's awesome.
Well, I know there's a lot of people watching, and there'll be more people watching the recorded version.
Right.
But it's interesting. I mean, not only is it's an interesting story, a personal story, but it's also a part of Detroit history that we get to see a sliver of that and talk about.
Okay, well, let's take a break and we'll wait for our next guest to come on. We just segue into
homeownership opportunities are rising in the city of Detroit, and there's a house out there that's right for you and your family. You don't even have to worry about credit or getting a loan. You can win a house for as little as $1,000 and pay for the renovation cost as you go. It all starts at buildingdetroit.org and the Detroit Land Bank Authority. Our auction and Own It Now programs offer a variety of houses in neighborhoods all over the city of Detroit. These homes are in desperate need of repair and new ownership. You can begin by going to our interactive map and detailed property listings to find the right fit for you. It won't be easy, and renovation costs are not cheap, but our compliance team is there every step of the way. We will help you track your progress and connect you with local discounts to save you more money. We have already sold more than 15,000 homes in the city of Detroit, and our inventory is shrinking fast, so you don't want to miss out on this wonderful opportunity. Start your home buying journey today by visiting buildingdetroit.org.
All right, we are back in the studio here, and if you want to bring him on, Joe, we've got
Tony Chambers.
Tony,
good morning.
What's up,
good morning. Not much. How's everybody doing today?
Man, well, we not doing so well because you over there, what, 85 degrees or something?
Yeah, it's 85-degree day and sunny.
How you doing?
Sunny. It's a beautiful day. I'm great. Glad to be on with the three of you.
Listen, I work with Tony. I served as a jury consultant when you represented the underwear bomber.
Yes.
That was an interesting case.
Yeah, Abdul Muttalib. Yep, you were my
you ever hear from him?
Is he what?
I said, you ever hear about him?
Yeah, I do. I've heard about him and from him. You know, he's still in Max, Super Max. He attempted to appeal, but unfortunately, because he pled guilty, he was pretty much denied all of his appeals. And some of the very issues we had discussed was what he tried to appeal, but the attorney couldn't get it to go through because of the plea, basically.
Okay. Well, we had a guest on before you, Tony, Joe Robinson, and he talked about growing up in the midst of the young boys, drug trade, etc. You, as a defense attorney, represented some of these folks in that profession.
And to be clear, wait a minute, to be clear, Joe Robinson's dad was with Best Friends, was affiliated with Best Friends, not YBI.
Represent, Best Friends was a part of YBI. Best Friends was a hit squad for YBI. And I represented a young man, Lonnie O'Brien, who was involved in a shooting of a 7-year-old girl in a drive-by. She was killed. And that was the first federal death penalty case in the state of Michigan and in the city of Detroit. And Lonnie was the lead defendant, and I represented Lonnie from Best Friends.
Now, Tony, I remember when I was at the Detroit News, I think it was 1988 or 89, we had the Chamber brothers. You were working for the Federal Defender's Office. You were a young man back then, and I thought you did a great job. I said, this guy is an up-and-comer in the legal profession. You were very young, working for the Federal Defender's Office, which had a lot of great attorneys anyways, but you were one of them, and you did a great job in that case, I remember, and subsequently you did a great job in a lot of other places. Hey, Joe, we were going to play a little video of the Chamber brothers real quick, just a little quickie.
Let's play
the second one.
Okay, yeah.
I think so.
And in our Spotlight investigation tonight, Crack Inc., the big business and big money of the most potent form of cocaine, crack. Crack is a plague of the inner cities in this country, and that's been especially true in Detroit. Tonight, NBC's Jim Cummins on how one gang adopted corporate methods to run the Detroit crack operation.
Go, 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 go! The front line in the war on crack.
Search warrant!
Houses and streets in big city slums. Every day, in city after city, local, state, and federal police battle pushers selling crack, the cheap, highly addictive form of cocaine.
2 for the 20. What you got? No, them chicken routes you got, man.
It's a battle that's difficult for the police to win because, in many places, the crack trade has transformed small-time hoodlums into big-time entrepreneurs. Among the most remarkable examples is the notorious Chambers Brothers gang of Detroit. Billy Joe, 26, Otis, 20, Willie, 34, and the ringleader, Larry, 38, were recently convicted of operating a crack cocaine empire that employed hundreds of people. The gang hired cooks to make the raw cocaine into crack rocks. They had couriers to deliver the drugs to gang salesmen at more than 500 crack houses. They used violence and intimidation to discourage competitors and to keep gang members in line.
Money, money, money!
The profits were staggering, up to $1 million a week. Authorities say the Chambers brothers who made this home video didn't even bother to count the $1 bills because it took too long.
Should we throw these ones away, man, since we got $500,000?
God.
You know, that video was the basis of a motion for Change's venue because it was leaked to the media. It was actually a grand jury exhibit, and it got leaked to the media, and I kind of knew informally how it happened. But nonetheless, that video never came into evidence. I kept it out of evidence because
You talk about the video with the money.
With the money, we rich. God damn it, we got $1 million here. What we gonna do with it? And they're in garbage bags. And the video of Larry, because I represented Larry Chambers, of Larry's home with the gold faucets and everything. Those videos never came in evidence.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so what was that like back then dealing with, I saw some of the defense attorneys like Murphy and all these guys who seemed to almost enjoy hanging with these guys. What was it like representing these guys, and what kind of interactions did you have with them?
Yeah, I had a very, very positive experience with all of them. This was the largest conspiracy case ever tried. And you talk about how things changed. There were 21 defendants in that trial. 21. I don't think it's been that many since. Typically, you don't see that kind of loyalty, but they had loyalty. All 21 went to trial, did not plead. They went to trial. These days, if you have a 21 defendant indictment, probably 18 of them going to plead guilty and going to cooperate with the federal government.
Yeah.
But it was a very good working relationship with Larry. I got to know BJ, Belinda, and various others that were sitting there because we were together for months. So, yes, ma'am.
And how was Larry? I talked to Larry after he was convicted. He would call me occasionally, but how did you find him in your interactions with him?
Larry was very pleasant. Larry was a gentleman. The things that probably went on during the conspiracy and some of the things that he was accused of and some of the violence, I didn't see that in him, Larry was a very laid back guy. So was BJ. Right. And everybody's out now except for Larry, I think.
Okay, go ahead, Vanessa.
Two questions. One, are you related to the Chambers brothers? Are you asking that question a lot?
I get asked that question very often. One, I am not. Two, in every newspaper article and every story that was run, there was a line that said, but unrelated to.
Two, you said there was 21 defendants. So you have all these attorneys. How did that flush out? How did that work out? Because everybody, we all have our different strategies. Yeah. We all have our different styles. I read a little bit of what was going on. Could you explain to the audience, how did that work?
Well, it was tough because we had so many lawyers and we had so many defendants. We had some great lawyers now. You mentioned Tim Murphy. We had Chuck Lusby in there and various others, Bill Buffalino. But I'm going to say this. We had one attorney who we had just cross-examined the main witness, and we had done it successfully. I just finished with her and really went after her. And she had just testified about some violent acts, including people being beat with a Louisville slugger, et cetera. And instead of this lawyer, whose client's name was never mentioned, instead of him just sitting there and saying, I have no questions, he stood up and said, look around the room. Is there anybody here that you're not afraid of? And we're like, what are you talking about? And so Chuck Lusby knocked the water jar over and somebody else started coughing and Judge Heinrich gave us a break. But the short story is after that, we came up with an award, which was called the Golden Screw Award during the trial. Right. And it was a screw and a piece of wood. And we kind of renamed it after the lawyer who always asked that worst question, who did that day,
Now, I have a question. I don't know if you heard this story, but I mean, in the beginning of the trial, before the trial actually started, I think the jury had been selected. Judge Sir Heinrich reprimanded the media for trying to portray the Chamber brothers as dangerous and said it was, tainting the trial and making people fearful of sitting on the jury. And then I later heard that Judge Sir Heinrich, and I don't know if you've heard the story, I was told from one of the attorneys who said Sir Heinrich was wearing a bulletproof vest and had a gun while he was presiding over the trial.
No, I'm that one I'm not familiar with, but it wouldn't surprise me.
But
it wouldn't surprise me.
But that my question is, were you ever scared of some of these people that you represented? If you didn't win and you had to look behind you or whatever?
Absolutely not. I always, and I did this with every client, I do everything I can. We do the best we can. We try to win. And if we don't, we set it up for appeal. I'll be more concerned with the federal government than I am my clients.
Tell us about how lawyers who represent drug defendants, how they treated. Sometimes the feds go after them.
You walk around with a target on your back every day, and you know it's there. Listen, after we did the Chambers Brothers case, I went into private practice. And after I did that, I would go in the federal building for years. I'm fighting with the DEA, the FBI, the IRS, ATF, and the U.S. Attorney's Office every day, multiple times a day, with people that they don't like, with people who they didn't even sometimes want to hire me. But what I would do is when I get on the elevator in the federal courthouse after the Chambers case, most of the agents would get off the elevator just because they didn't want to ride up with me. And I would just simply tell them, thank you for the elevator. Make sure you hold it early next time and keep it moving.
I have a funny story or an interesting story. During the Chambers Brothers, there was a defendant named Hollywood, if you remember.
Yeah, Hollywood Duplessis.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and he was out on bond as opposed to a lot of the other folks who were not out on bond. And I remember going to the bathroom and I was sitting in the stall and Tim Murphy walked in the bathroom and Hollywood was there. And Tim Murphy turned to Hollywood and said, "Stop wearing these $1,000 suits, man. You look like a dope dealer." He said, "Go to Sears and get yourself $100 suit. Get a bunch of those." He says, "Stop wearing these $1,000 suits." Did you worry about the image of your clients in cases like that?
Well, you're always concerned, and Hollywood was dismissed out of the case.
Right.
And there was as you remember, there was a briefcase with a lot of receipts and other things in it that didn't come into evidence. We kept it out. Mm-hmm. But you're always worried about your client's image. You always want them to tone it down. But Linda Lumpkin, Larry's girlfriend, she used to come dressed to the nines to court every day to trial. In fact, even Judge Heinrich's clerk was saying to me, if she gets convicted, I want her wardrobe.
Oh man.
But yeah, you always kind of want to take a look at that, and you want to make them clean it up. I had a client on another major drug case, another gang case, where he kind of didn't listen. Let's just put it that way. And I knew that it was going to come back to haunt him, and it did. And unfortunately, not taking advice is doing life as we sit here.
Let me ask you this: did it ever cross your mind that someone come to you, it might be a setup from the federal government?
Oh, absolutely. I've had phone calls. I've had people in my office where I say something about this isn't right, and I've not represented people for that reason. Sometimes you just know it's not right, even if it's not a personality issue. 9 times out of 10 on a case like this, where it's a major defendant, either you've already represented them or who referred them. When somebody comes in and says, well, I just wanted to come see you and blah, 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 and, they're trying to do things and say things that are inappropriate, the first thing you want to do is get them out your office.
Now, Otis Culpepper got in trouble with the IRS for sometimes taking payments in the allegations were in drugs and in cars when he'd get the YBI guys off on murder cases and stuff like that. Did you have clients sometimes who said, "Hey, I can get you a kilo of this, and or here's some weed or whatever"? Did you worry about? Did you get that where people were offering you stuff? Or
I have never ever had a client offer me drugs. I can honestly say that, and I think they know me well enough to know that wouldn't go well. Yeah. I will say this: you're talking about being targeted. One evening, I was working on another major case, Eddie Gaston, who used to run the Cash Corridor area. He used to have elite heroin and best in the world, and it was stamped back then. And I was leaving the office one night. It was real late. I worked late. It must have been about 11:30, and I realized I was being followed. And I was living on the northwest side then, and I got pulled over by DPD. And when they pulled me over, I simply said, "Tell the suit from down the street in the unmarked cars to come on down here and talk to me." And they were like, "Well, can we search your car?" "No, you can't search my car. What do you need to search my car for? You've been following me since I left Griswold from the Penobscot building. I saw you on the lodge. What do you want?" Well, we're going to search. "No, you're not searching my car. You know where I live. I'm going home. I'm a mile from home." And the suits did come on down eventually. We had quite a conversation. but they ended up, I would not let them search my car. I dared them to search it. And there was, of
Were
course, there's nothing in it. I've been working all night.
If they searched your car, they were going to plant something in there?
I was concerned. I didn't know what they were going to do because they knew I had been into office all evening. I hadn't met with a client. My client was in custody because this also involved a murder. So I hadn't even met with anybody. So why are you following me and why you want to search my car?
Man, with all that going on, wouldn't it have just been safer just to say I'm not even going to represent these kind of defendants?
I'm not doing that. You can't scare me and keep me from doing anything I'm going to do. And I will say on that stop, I came up at Linwood off the Lodge, and they alleged that there was a shooting in the area, and my car matched the shooting, which was total bull. You followed me. You knew I just got off the freeway, but nice try.
Yeah.
But I think in particular, lawyers, defense lawyers, and black defense lawyers definitely have a target on their back, and you have to be extremely careful.
Now, when did you leave Detroit and go down to Florida?
I've been down here about 5 years now.
Oh,
so
and how do you like it?
I do. I manage litigated teams and other things. But I do. And I'm doing a little something different. I still have this thing about the federal death penalty, and I've never lost a federal death penalty case. I never will, even sitting as a consultant or part of a team. I have one coming up, actually, from the east side, and the client who we have is about to be sentenced. And his mom was actually involved with some of the guys in the Chambers Brothers, right in the neighborhood.
And are you still involved here in Detroit? You're living in Florida. Are you still involved in cases here in Detroit?
Yeah, I simply consult on them. I'm working on a death penalty case and about probably 12 other cases.
Okay.
In the Detroit area, as well as some in Arizona and other places.
When you gonna write your book on some of your most interesting cases?
As soon as Allan tells me he's ready.
Okay.
Tony, do you miss? Excuse me. Do you miss the courtroom?
Sometimes I do. I don't miss the work of it. I'm still involved in trials and litigation. I'm just not doing it myself. I do miss the trials. I don't miss the prep work, because a lot of people don't understand, as you do, Vanessa, how much work it is to get ready for a trial and how much work it takes during the trial. It takes something out of you, it really does.
Well, I did get to see you because you brought me on as a jury consultant in the underwear bomber case. It's just a lot lot You got to be you
sat at the table with us. You sat at the table with us with those questionnaires. Yeah, we had a large team on that one. Fortunate thing was I have learned throughout the years you really need a team. You can't do it on your own. A lot of people try to do it on their own. You need a team. When you're representing somebody major, I did the Kmart case. I represented Van Hawkins. You need a team. I've had as many as 32 lawyers with me at one time. You need a team.
And
if you're going to be successful.
You started was that your first job, Federal Defender's Office?
That was my second job. I was working for UAWGM Legal Services.
Okay. And it's interesting. I think people always think like, oh, I'm getting a court-appointed attorney. And the Federal Defender's Office had some of the best attorneys that were equal to the ones who were charging $500 or doing retainers of 50 grand or whatever. Absolutely. You guys provided as good a defense as some of the most expensive attorneys in town.
And back then we had more resources.
Right.
So even though, I may be out front, I can bring 2 or 3 lawyers from the office with me.
Right.
And it makes sense. And we've got our investigators and everything else. The Federal Defender's Office. Yeah, Leroy, Rick Elfrick, Miriam. Paul,
Sandy Plotkin, the legend.
Yeah, Plot.
Well, anyway, Tony, hey man, thanks for taking time out from your beachfront home, enjoying your cocktails and watching the sun.
I have one trivia question for you.
Go ahead.
If I give you the number 63, approximately 63 years, do you know what it would mean or what it would be for?
You got me.
You got me.
I've known the three of you for different reasons for a long time. Comes out to about 63 years collectively.
Wow.
Oh, that's great. And thanks a lot. We're going to have you back on.
Thank you.
Tony Chambers, a man, one of the best legal minds here in Michigan and probably in Florida and the country.
Right.
Thank you very much. We'll be talking.
Thanks.
Most humble. Thank you very much. You all have a good day.
You too. Yeah. Yeah, that was great.
All righty. Tony Chamchon is a good guy.
Yeah, he tried the underwear bomber.
Uh-huh.
That was an interesting case because I'm gonna tell you, if it would have went to trial, it would have been a hard case to convict. But this guy, father, one of the richest men, powerful men in Nigeria, cut some deal, and they did cut a deal, and then federal government
serving life though.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
The conversation was really funny because when you practice law, and especially in this area, one attorney may represent him at one point in time in his life. When you mentioned Duplessis, I was like, oh, that was a client of mine as well. Yeah. A different issue, but I ended up representing several members of the Duplessis family. So it's just really interesting how Detroit may seem large, but is really very, very small. We're all connected in some form, in some manner.
Okay, I want to get back to you, Vanessa. You talked about the shootings of people going to the wrong house, sitting in on the wrong driveway. Tell us a little bit about what happened to your brother.
Oh, my brother, 14 years old. This is at the time they would call it what was it, Devil's Night?
Yes.
He was 2 blocks away. We lived on the west side. He was 2 blocks away with a group of friends. And, they doing what they do as kids. And someone apparently, I don't know who in the group, threw a brick at this man's place. This older man comes out with his gun and he shoots and he kills my brother. You're talking about changing the dynamics of my family forever. I mean, forever. Now, what is strange is that someone in the house heard the gunshot, and the group of kids that my brother was running with, one of the boys went to my parents' home, and my parents are like, "Where's my brother's name was Damon? Where's Damon?" And I don't know why, but he said he didn't know. The guy ended up going to trial. He had some mental health issues. His family approached my family, from what I understand, and said, "You know what? We can't say that he didn't do it. We're just sorry that this happened." And I hear that. I heard this recently when my brother passed. That my father was sitting in the courthouse, and he had a knife in his sock.
Your father did?
My father did.
Yeah.
And when my father was notorious, everybody in the neighborhood, he used to knock like people use guns. He would cut you to shreds. Uh-huh. And he went to pull his knife out, and my mom pleaded with him, don't do it, because he was going to kill the guy right there in the courthouse. So this guy was apparently not only mentally ill, but afraid, So it really impacted my family. And you know what? That story made the national news. I remember reading it in the Jet magazine, reading about, my brother's death. So he didn't get a chance to go to high school or do any of those things. And when he passed, a couple of years later, my father passed. And I believe that it had so much to do with him having a broken heart. And keep in mind, I've shared with you guys, and maybe one day we'll talk about my life, but my father was a very complex man. He was a local celebrity. He was a comedian, but my father was also a street guy. Yeah. So I saw
both sides.
Absolutely. I saw both sides. Yeah. And so he too, he used substances. He was an alcoholic. So, and that was actually the demise of his entertainment career, but his contacts with people, he had contacts with people in YBI. He also knew judges. He also had held with cops. It was nothing for the Spinners to be at our house hanging out, but it also was nothing for the local, his his friend that was a pimp to be at the house.
Right.
You know, I was one of those kids who, you know, he taught me how to shoot crap, but I couldn't play Pacino.
Yeah.
You know, he was one of those, I'm gonna show you what to do, but you can't do what I do. And like Joe, I chose, and I think they set me up. I chose not to live that kind of life, you know.
Well, we're glad you're here. As we come to the end of the show, Allan, your final thought?
Final thoughts. I know Vanessa has a little bit of cough, and I had one for 2
Right.
weeks. And I'd say one of the things, of many besides taking like vitamin C and D and zinc and all that, is honey and tea. Honey really broke up. I had a couple nights.
No whiskey in?
No, I didn't put any whiskey, but I had a couple nights where I was up all night, every hour, getting up and coughing and stuff like that. And the honey and the tea really helped.
Vanessa, your final thought.
Final thoughts. I want everybody to have a wonderful Saturday. I'm looking forward to another spirited podcast next week. Like, share, subscribe. If you have an outrage,
we were giving the incorrect.
we were giving the incorrect.
It's deadline. I'm sorry.
No.
Whoa. Detroit
in black
and white 313 at gmail.com. And what you can do is make a little selfie video, send us if you have a commentary or whatever. We will play it on the air. And again, it's Detroit in black and white 313 at gmail.com.
And for those people who think that we don't have a phone number, we legitimately do have a phone number, but we'd rather you do your outrage and post it up on our email. And what we'll do is we'll play it during the show.
And we also have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel.
We had a gram.
We have Instagram and stuff. So
Western
feel free to
you want to send us a telegram,
right?
Western Union, man. Want to thank Joe Robinson. Is it the fourth? Third. There's 3 Joe Robinsons.
Joe 111.
And Tony Chambers, legal analyst. And want to thank you, Allan. Want to thank you, Vanessa.
All right.
Back next week at 10 a.m. Detroit in black and white. And thank you, audience.
All right.